Oh, y'all look so pretty. I love that collar, sir. It is giving well done. How y'all feeling today? Please tell me y'all had some of that vegan cheese out there because it's delicious. I'm into it. Oh, guys. You know what? I'm just going to jump right in because I have some really important questions for y'all. Does your government owe you money and you sick and tired of them playing in your face? Today, we are here to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, otherwise known as IRA. See, I like to call it IRA because it sounds like a rich uncle that passed away and then left you a couple dollars. Oh, your sweet Uncle Ira, he died. Now, you didn't know him, but he knew you. And when he died, he left you everything he had. Not to mention your sweet Uncle Ira, AKA the Inflation Reduction Act, AKA a landmark federal law aimed to boost promotion of clean energy. Hey! I love clean energy. We all here because we love clean energy. Give me a platform. I will boost her any day. Not to mention, the Inflation Reduction Act, AKA your sweet Uncle Ira, is the United States government's largest investment in climate solutions ever. We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe. But how do we get to the money? Because there's a whole bunch of money to get to. Huh? What was that? How much money? Thank you for asking over there. Well, my homegirl, Kinsey, AKA the management consulting firm McKinsey & Company, Kinsey said that the Inflation Reduction Act contains $500 billion in new spending. $500 billion. $500 billion? Okay, hold on. Let me put this in perspective for y'all. Do you know this man? This man, some might call him Michael Jordan because that's his name. He's worth $2 billion. And I thought he had all the money. You might know him from sports if you like sports. You might know him from sneakers if you like sneakers. You might know him from the iconic 1996 film Space Jam, where he starred along, y'all love Space Jam, where he starred alongside even more iconic Looney Tune characters. You might even know him from a cereal box. He is only worth $2 billion. You could buy 250 Michael Jordans with the money your sweet Uncle Ira left you. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy Michael Jordan. That would be irresponsible. But you might could. But Rashida, how do we get to the money? Well, we have some super, super duper important people to teach us how today. Are you guys excited to learn more? I know I am. Okay, I know they said my name, but I'm going to remind you who I am because my name is Rashida Crockett. Nice to meet you all. I know y'all probably oh, if you were here yesterday, Esteban done got spicy. But that's because I'm not Esteban, I'm Rashida. Pleasure to meet you. Welcome to the Hollywood Climate Summit, the only event in Los Angeles where Earth is the star. It's funny how Earth been a star, right? We just maybe forgot because Denzel Washington is really, really famous. Oh, before we go any further, we have some important people to thank. Our incredible interpreters from the Entertainment Interpreting Association. Thank you guys so much, especially Amber. Is Amber here? Throw your hand in the air, Amber. Hi. This is Amber right here. Thank you for helping make our event more accessible. Also, did y'all know we have screen printing today? Did y'all know about that? Now, if you bought your own t-shirt, it's free. And you know we like to be sustainable here. I hope y'all bought your own t-shirt. If not, then we're also selling them. And you can get something screen printed here. Hey, we making clothes here at the Hollywood Climate Summit. All right, well, without further ado, I have two incredible, or may I say wonderful, women to introduce to you today. It is my honor to present our U.S. Secretary of Energy, Secretary Jennifer Granholm, and the Director of Wonder Woman, Miss Patty Jenkins.
I think I'm going here. You are amazing, Rashida Crockett. And I think Patty's going to join us in just a moment. What a treat to be able to share a stage both with Rashida and Patty Jenkins, a true trailblazer. So thank you all for being here. I'm pleased to be able to join you to maybe give you a little bit of an update on Uncle Ira and the Biden administration's fight against climate change. So many of you may know, I'm sure you've all seen Patty's Wonder Woman 1984, right? And it's so amazing, inspiring. And it starts off in Washington, D.C., where Diana Prince, who's Wonder Woman, she works at the Smithsonian. So the story that I am about to tell you also begins in Washington. I'm sure I cannot promise the same production value, but I can promise that this story contains suspense and high stakes and lots of tension and fight scenes and something that actually might feel a little bit in short supply these days, which is hope. So let's dive in. This is the story of what happens when our country has a leader who recognizes the threat of climate change. And I just want to let that sink in for a second, because that's no guarantee in a president. But Joe Biden sees the threat of climate change, and as Rashida said, he has done more about it than any American president ever has. Now, so, against some really tough political odds and some knockdown, drag-out fights, he did enact this biggest series of laws, these are two of them, in American history. These are laws that are going to break our reliance on fossil fuels. They are going to repower our economy on clean energy. So the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, and you can see the Inflation Reduction Act is less than 2 years old. But 3.5 years into this administration, I can report to you that because of the president's actions, we are finally, as a nation, on a path to doing our part to saving the planet. How? Lo and behold, policy works. By using these public tools to kick off a clean energy revolution, we are producing more clean energy in this country than ever before. We're making these unprecedented investments in communities that have historically been left behind, and we're building the energy workforce to make sure all of this progress lasts. So first, the Biden administration's strategy recognizes this simple fact that if we're going to win this fight, we have to be producing lots of clean energy. And so these two historic laws really consist of unprecedented tax credits and grants and loans, which are the policy tools which change the economics of clean energy for businesses who may have been previously sort of hesitant to get in the game. These two laws have made America the irresistible nation for clean energy investment. Irresistible. It has never been more lucrative to build a clean energy project in America. Solar arrays, wind farms, all of that. And not just that, but to build factories for all of their parts. So solar cells and panels and mounting systems and wind turbines and blades and towers and battery minerals and cells and packs and EV components and frames. We can build more projects and we can generate more clean energy if we have all the parts here ready to go. So this stuff used to be built in competitor nations, almost exclusively in many areas, but not anymore. Not anymore. I know, right? It's so cool. Because from soup to nuts, we are building the entire clean energy ecosystem here in America. And it is already working. I'm going to show you. Let me show you what we're doing with solar. Last year, America built and produced the most solar energy in our history, and we're going to do it again this year. Yes! For the first time in American history, we actually expect energy from solar and wind to outpace the energy we get from coal. Yes! And in total, since January of 2021, America has built more than 100 gigawatts of clean power. Now, some of you may know what a gigawatt is, some of you don't. Let me just put it in perspective. It's like building almost 50 Hoover dams in just 3 years. Hoover Dam generates 2 gigawatts of power. We have built almost 50 Hoover Dam equivalents in just 3 years. And wait a second, because it gets even better, because by 2030, we're projected to build more than 660 more gigawatts, which is more than 330 Hoover Dams by 2030. Y'all are going to be around for that. And just by the way, think about all the jobs that we're creating, right? When we have all of these clean energy supply chains. So this is so cool, I'm about to show you. It makes I was the governor of Michigan, a manufacturing state. This makes my heart go pitter-pat. You ready? See this is so far, these are all the companies that have announced that they are going to be manufacturing clean energy supply chains in this country. All of these companies formerly doing business overseas have brought back that manufacturing capacity for this clean energy economy. Since the passage of the president's clean energy laws, companies have announced almost 700 new factories, making everything from batteries and electric vehicles, as you can say, heat pumps, hydrogen, land-based wind, nuclear, all of that, all across. And each of these dots in communities large and small, they represent a step forward in our work to take on the climate crisis. Right? This is so far. And now these are just the factories. If I layered upon this map the solar projects, utility scale solar, utility scale wind, you wouldn't even be able to see the country because there's so much going on. So the president also knows, though, that climate action really doesn't mean much if we don't do it right? The country's got this long history of making environmental policy decisions that have harmed poor Americans and tribal nations and communities of color. And we built coal plants and oil refineries in poor neighborhoods. And it was those families that bore the brunt of the resulting pollution. So as President Biden tackles the climate crisis, as we all do, he is particularly committed to using those policy tools to reverse the inequities of the past, right? We have the tools, and now we're committed to using them. So just as an example, our laws offer, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction, they offer extra tax incentives to developers if they locate projects in disadvantaged communities. So let me just give you an example on this. If you are a developer of solar and you want to do a community solar project and you decide that you want to do it in an area where it's a disadvantaged community, you get a 30% tax credit for that, and you get another 10% on top of it, stackable, 40% if it's in a disadvantaged community or if it's adjacent to public housing. You get another 10% if you use American-made solar panels. So now you're talking about a 50% tax credit. You get another 10% if you pay prevailing wage and use apprenticeships. You're talking 60%. You can get up to a 70% tax credit, not a tax deduction, a tax credit if you do the right thing. Isn't that great? That's all embedded in the law. We talk about structural inequity. We are embedding structural equity into the tax system in clean energy to do right where we have done wrong in the past. And if you want a federal loan or grant for your project, you have to, as a condition of receiving funding from the Department of Energy, you have to tell us how your project will directly benefit the community that it's going to be based in. And we're going to hold your feet to the fire. So if you say, we want you to hire locally, for example, we want you to clean up pollution, and we want you to work with the community to decide what those benefits are. And you know what? All of this is working because a study recently found that under the Biden administration, these are some of the communities that I have been visiting, but that double the investments are happening in counties that are disadvantaged relative to their size than in wealthier counties. Twice as much investment going into disadvantaged communities, communities of color. Tribal communities, another example of what's happening. Over the past year alone, we have invested more in tribal energy projects than ever in our history. And what's special is really that all of these projects are led by tribes, for tribes. They're uniquely shaped by what they know their communities need. So for example, the Department of Energy does a lot of work with the Navajo Nation. And something of note about the Navajo Nation is that in the sunniest parts of the country, thousands of tribal homes don't have electricity at all. Not just in the sunniest part of the country, in the wealthiest country on the planet. And there are thousands of homes that just do not have electricity. And these families rely on flashlights and batteries. And if they have a generator, they have to drive 45 minutes to town to fill it with gas. If they don't have a propane refrigerator, they go buy ice almost every day. So DOE has funded solar microgrids and battery storage that can bring electricity to remote communities, rooftop solar for tribal homes, and families can actually take advantage not just of electricity, but of, guess what, healthy food in the fridge, and running water and internet and making a pot of coffee, all the stuff that we do every single day. So the president's policy is tackling both the climate crisis and decades of environmental injustice. Important. America's irresistible, tackling environmental injustice, but for the strategy to succeed and to last, we need a third component, which is that we need a skilled workforce, right? To fill all the jobs that this climate strategy is creating, to install the panels, to rewire the homes, the offices, to build the batteries. So President Biden is making these historic investments in American workers as well. We're incentivizing companies that we fund to create these high quality, good paying union jobs that folks can raise a family on, that will attract and train and retrain talent in this space. Because in the fight against climate crisis, our best weapon is our people. So this is Raquel Dexter. And Raquel, I met her a couple of years ago when she was a journey worker overseeing a solar and storage site outside of Las Vegas, Townsite Solar, one of the biggest in the country. She was what they call slinging glass, meaning, putting these huge panels and putting them onto the racks. And today she is a business rep for her union, and she says, "It gives me a feeling of accomplishment to know that I am doing something to leave a better earth for those that came behind me." Workers in clean energy deeply feel the mission. This is Mario Torres. And Mario, I met him a couple of months ago in Colorado. And since the age of 18, right out of high school, he has worked at a company that makes energy efficient windows. Not just any old energy efficient window. This technology actually reduces a building's energy usage by 25%. And he's so great. He's totally inspired by the mission. And he says, "We are trying to change the world one window at a time," which is awesome. This right here, this is Kara Kites. And I met her just, I think 2 weeks ago in Massachusetts. She's an engineer at a company that manufactures hydrogen fuel cells to power buses and trucks. And she told us, she gave this whole presentation to us about going to visit her son's school. Her son is a kindergartner, Caleb. And it was like, bring your parent to work day. And Caleb introduces her to his classmates saying, "This is my mom. And she makes clean energy engines." And Kara said that the pride on her son's face was something she is just never going to forget. So, my question to all of you brilliant Hollywood poobahs is, you writers, you storytellers, how do we tell this story, right? How do we tell the story of people like Raquel and Mario and Cara? How do we show that it's possible to build a career in this amazing clean energy economy while also building a cleaner and a safer world for their kids. The story of how America is finally taking on this fight with the ambition and the audacity that we've always known we were capable of. This is the story about how we got our mojo back, our willingness really to take on the toughest problems with confidence, the story of how different this country and our planet would look if we defend these policies and build on these victories. Right? We have to defend these policies and build on these victories because the difference between success and failure could not be starker. So here, the red shape right there on this graph, the area on this graph, shows where America would be without the president's climate laws. You know, our goal is to get to net zero, right, by 2050. That's where we'd be if we hadn't done it. The green shows where we will be because of them. And now check out the blue. The blue shows where we need to be if we're going to hit net zero by 2050. Now that green and blue triangle shows what these we got more work to do, but it shows what these climate laws have made possible. Something that many people just a few years ago would have thought was impossible. That is the difference that leadership can make. And that is what we've got to defend. So I told you the story of our climate fight as I see it so far, but there's one more character in this story you haven't heard about yet. I know, that's my granddaughter. She's 5 months old. Her name is Lily Ray, R-E-Y, which means king. Lily the king, my granddaughter. She's a booster rocket for me, for why I'm in this fight. Who wouldn't want to fight for those cheeks? And who wouldn't want to fight for the girl that she will soon become? And the Wonder Woman that she will grow up to be. She's my granddaughter, yes, but my grandchild is your child or your grandchild, and your daughter is my daughter. These are all of our children, right? This fight is about saving their future home from becoming uninhabitable, as it is already becoming in so many places. Sometimes when you're in the middle of history, it's hard to tell because you're in the middle of it. But when we look back, this is going to be the moment that decided it all. We have never been so fortunate to have a president this committed. We've never had this kind of public investment. We've never had an opportunity like this. And so if you are a writer or a producer or a director or creator, help people see what it looks like to fight climate change and win. If you're an activist, help us protect this historic legislation so we can stay in the fight. If you're somebody who gives a damn about the fate of this planet, which I know you are, you wouldn't be sitting here. Our one and only shared home. Come on, come join this fight. And it is a fight. There's this old parable, and I'm going to close with this. It's a prayer, and it goes like this. When at last I stand before the face of God, God will say to me, show me your scars, your wounds. And if I have no scars, God will ask, was there nothing worth fighting for? In the end, may we all bear the scars from waging the most important fight in the history of the world. I am proud to be a warrior in the trenches with you. Thank you all.
And now, please welcome to the stage, Patty Jenkins.
You are an awesome speaker. That was such a great and inspiring speech. I'm so happy I got to see that.
Oh, well, I'm just so inspired. I was telling her backstage that, because I've been elected to a few things, a lot of young women come and ask for advice if they're thinking about running for office. And the thing I say to them is see Wonder Woman at least twice. And some of you need to see it 3 times. So thank you so much for inspiring so many women to be strong and have purpose.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. So, you spoke about so many incredible things, but also you are an incredible woman and have had such an interesting journey doing so many different things. What is the story that led you here to this? You were the first woman governor in Michigan. You're the first woman to hold this position.
Second, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Hazel O'Leary.
Oh, okay.
Under Clinton.
I thought you were the first. Okay. But anyway, you've done so many incredible things and in so many different directions. And here you are, you've chosen this. And part of what you just talked about answers why. But what was your journey to really focusing in on this?
I really appreciate this question. I'm going to try. Can I tell you a quick story that really inspired me to move in this direction? And it was when I was first governor. I was governor of Michigan during the auto meltdown, the Great Recession. It was just factory after factory was leaving. And this one factory in this little tiny town called Greenville in Michigan, town of 8,000 people, employed 3,000 people. So it was like a one-company town. And our economic development people came to us and they said, you know what, this factory run by Electrolux, they're going to go to Mexico. I said, no, this is we can't have this. So I'm the governor. I'm going to go and make them an offer they can't refuse. So we brought the whole cabinet. We gave them 20 years of zero taxes. We said we were going to help build them a new factory. We did all this kind of stuff. And the management of Electrolux at this big meeting took our list of incentives and they went outside the room for 17 minutes. And they came back in and they said, this is the most generous that any community has ever been. But there's nothing you can do to compensate for the fact that we can pay $1.57 an hour in Juarez, Mexico. And so we're going. When the factory left, and they did leave in Little Greenville, it was like a nuclear bomb went off. The community had a gathering that they called, it was a grieving, the Last Supper. And I went to this gathering, and I wasn't invited because, of course, I had failed to keep the factory there. But I went anyway because I just felt so hopeless about it. And I went up to the first table. It was like 8-top table, and people were eating out of box lunches. And this guy stands up and he says, Gov, he said, I've worked at this factory for 30 years. I went from high school to factory. I'm 48 years old. Here are my 2 young teenagers. My father worked at this factory. My grandfather worked at this factory. All I know, he said, is how to make refrigerators. And then he said, puts his hand on his chest like this. So, Gov, tell me, who is ever going to hire me? Who's ever going to hire me? That question was asked by everybody at one of the 60,000 factories that closed down between the 1990s and the 2000s. And communities all across the country devastated, and so much of that was concentrated in the industrial Midwest. So when I became governor, I was like, okay, we got to diversify. We have to add new sectors. What's coming up? And it was clean energy. And lo and behold, we attracted to Greenville 2 solar factories. One company built 2 factories on the land where the refrigerator factory was. So great. Everybody was so happy. And then 2 years in, the factories closed down because China had their own strategic plan, which was to absorb all of the solar panel manufacturing in the United States. And so Greenville was left again. And it was like, So to me, the fact that we had no partner in Washington, no federal policy, it was like, for governors, it was like bringing a knife to a gunfight. We had nothing that we could do. My little tax incentives were nothing compared to what China was able to do in subsidizing and all of that. And China was doing what it wanted to do in it, but it had federal policy, and we didn't. So I was so excited that the president came in and said, we're going to do, the words industrial policy used to get people's pants in a knot, in a bunch. But we're doing it. And you saw that map, it's working. So what got me in the fight is looking into the eyes of people who lost their jobs for no fault of their own and knowing there was a better way.
That's a great story. So leads right to one of my questions actually, which is, having looked in those eyes, who are the eyes that you've gotten to look into who have experienced the opposite? What are the towns and the places that you've seen green energy come into and transform their way of life?
Oh my God. Okay, so West Virginia. Who is from West Virginia? Wheeling, West Virginia. Awesome. Well, let me tell you a story about Weirton, West Virginia. All right. So Weirton, West Virginia was a steel town. Similar to my story about Electrolux, the steel mill closed. People, like it was a way of life in Weirton, West Virginia. And when the steel mill closed, the sidewalks rolled up, young people moved away, all of that. And then, lo and behold, this company called Form Energy, and they build utility scale batteries for the electric grid. And they do it in a process that is, that's related to iron ore. And so they located their factory on the site of the old steel mill. And at the community, ribbon cutting, I went to it and it was a big hoo-ha. Joe Manchin was there. We got us all to sing Almost Heaven, West Virginia, which he does everywhere. But one of the city council members, and his name is Tim Connell, he comes up to me and he says, a tear comes down. He said, I cannot tell you what this means for us. He said, it is a whole new life. And it's the same kind of story, but only with a happy ending. He said, my kids, he said, I worked at the steel mill. My grandfather worked at the steel mill. My father worked at the steel mill. I wanted my kids to work at the steel mill, but they all moved away. And he said, now they're really excited about living near us and working at a place that is future facing in clean energy. Places like that, honestly, are happening all over the country, stories like that. Y'all just need to tell these stories. It's so great. People, human beings who feel like, we call these the Phoenix Projects, you know?
And I couldn't agree more, and it's one of the things, then we'll talk about it more later, but in depth when we talk about the filmmaking part of it. But I think that a big part of it is the positivity. You see this with the advancement of technology throughout history. You see when machines showed up, the Luddites, the literal Luddites, are the people who believe that the loss of the old way of life is going to mean the loss of everything. You see it with the printing press, that books are going to ruin people's minds. We still deal with it with film, with like people are never going to go out anymore. They're going to stay in their houses. People never change. But I think embracing the positivity of these things, where you're able to make the world a better place. Look at all this energy. By harnessing this energy, we can make the world a better place. I think that's such an important story to be told.
100%. And so the Department of Energy is a science entity, really. I mean, we're now doing a lot of deployment, but we have the 17 national labs, and so we get sort of a sneak peek on the next generation technologies that are coming down the pike. If that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what does. Science is, let's believe the science, let's invest in the science, let's let the scientists guide us to this clean energy future. It's very exciting.
So speaking of exactly that, what do you wish people knew more about both what you guys have done and been able to achieve, and or what's coming? What are the exciting things?
So number one, I wish that people knew, and this is one of the reasons why we're out telling folks about the story, is about how holistic this strategy is. In other words, we're not just doing tax credits. We are doing tax credits plus uplifting communities that have been left behind, plus workforce development, plus creating demand-side strategies. So let's just take the electric vehicle. So right now, of course, the guts of the electric vehicle is the battery, right? And the guts of the battery, they have anode, cathode, separator material, electrolyte. You got to build all of that. And largely, all of that has been in China, the battery components in particular. So we want to lure that here, to have that full supply chain here. That's one component. That is a supply side strategy. We want to build it into the vehicle. That's the supply side strategy. How do you create a demand side strategy? So then you give people tax credits to buy those electric vehicles. So you get $7,500 off at the dealer from the federal tax credits, which are stackable with the California tax credits. Now you're talking about a $15,000 off the top of an electric vehicle here. Come on. That is a demand side strategy, right? And then you have to also make sure you've got charging everywhere. And so part of the agenda through the bipartisan infrastructure law, $4.5 billion to build our charging stations in places where the private sector hasn't gone yet. So we've got this whole program to put every 50 miles on transportation corridors across the country a high-speed charging station. We've got now, right? So we've got 180,000 of them. The goal is to get to 500,000. There are about 900 charging stations added every single week across America as a result of this effort. So we got to do the holistic, and then you have to make sure you got the workforce to build out the batteries, right? So this strategy was really comprehensive, and this is why it's working. This is what I wish people knew.
That's amazing. And I have an idea for you, which is, so I've had to make my last many projects in England because we have a tax credit problem here in the state of California. And they so much of Northern California thinks that it's a charity case to give good tax credits to the film industry, so it's left, it's gone. What about a tax credit for filmmakers that are making films that address these things?
Love it.
So you could apply to.
I endorse that.
Because the other thing that happens in England is that there's no state and federal, so you get a huge thing.
Okay, we're taking this back. Come on.
Okay, so if
both to Sacramento
Yes.
as well as to DC.
So if you can apply with a film that forwards these causes, you could get a tax credit. Wouldn't that be great? I just thought of that. I like it.
This is brainstorming in real time here.
So climate change, we're all seeing it, observing it. We're everything that's happening back east and the heat and everything. But we're having our big changes here in California. What has the DOE been able to do to address the climate change in various parts of the country?
Oh, first of all, there's so much going on. Like, just as an example of those 700 projects, I think like 70 of them are in California. All these companies that have come, if you look back, if I pulled that thing up, you'd see all up and down California companies that you're really got so much happening in the battery space, in building batteries for electric vehicles and electric vehicle assembly. But California also competed to be one of the hydrogen hubs. So clean hydrogen, and I'm talking about clean hydrogen, we call it the Swiss Army knife of clean energy because it can be used as energy, it can be used as storage, it can carry energy. And what California did was to put together a whole plan for the Port of Los Angeles as well as for the trucking and the drayage to be electrified, either through hydrogen fuel cells, which obviously you can do for big trucks, but also fleets of trucks as well as for ports. And all up and down California, there's going to be a network now of jobs created in clean hydrogen. And hydrogen, by the way, and I don't mean to talk down to anybody if you don't, so I apologize for what I'm about to say if you already know. But hydrogen, of course, hydrogen is basically, water is basically, H2, two hydrogens and an oxygen. And so if you split water into hydrogen and oxygen, you get the hydrogen. And all that there's no CO2 emissions, right? If you use water as your input. So that, and then how do you power the splitting of it? Because there's these big machines called electrolyzers that do that. If you power it with renewable energy, which California has so much of, you create this virtuous, clean cycle. So California is going to lead in clean energy, and we gave $1 billion basically to California to set that up. And the private sector is also obviously weighing in big matches on the private sector side.
Amazing. That's so cool. I did not know that about California. Good for them in that way. So
give some props to your state. Come on.
No, totally. In so many ways, that's true. So, many of us are filmmakers, and we talk about narrative. We've got a big narrative problem in this world right now that it's
tell us, how do we tell the story?
Well, let's get to that next. But my first question is, how do you address people not believing the narrative, not believing in climate change, not believing in these different things all over the country? Like, how do you deal with making people see how important this is?
I mean, it is the hardest question, right? Because there's a whole separate track of stories that are being told that cause people to not believe in science, to not believe in climate science, et cetera, when what's happening before their very eyes is their own, space is becoming expensive. Look at what's happening in Phoenix. Phoenix has got how many days? Every single month is a new record of days over 100, 110 degrees. How can you live in that? And how can you, if you are living in that, deny that things are changing, right? In the Midwest, in Michigan, we used to get way high piles of snow every winter. And now, are any of you from the Midwest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? You've seen this change just in this past, in the space of 10 or 15 years. There is no denying it. However, there's a whole industry of people who are vested in the status quo, who want to deny it and want to cause people to deny it, and they're successful. We have our own little, on our website, Malarkey Corner, to be able to disprove some of this. But this is where we need help. We need help of the people who will set the record straight, the storytellers. I think this duality of stories is so utterly fundamental. I will say that I have some hope and optimism. There is, for example, a Republican climate caucus. The chair of the climate caucus just made it through a primary in Utah, and so to take over Mitt Romney's seat. So I'm hopeful there are some. And because of all of these investments that are happening on that map, like 60 to 70% of them are in districts that historically have not believed, red districts. And when people start getting hired to build batteries for electric vehicles in your district, you start to think, well, maybe we should be buying the product that we're building. And so I see the ground softening, but in an election season, it's very hard, which is why we need allies to be able to tell the truth.
Yeah, that's why one of the first narratives that I think we need to, not us necessarily, but we need the world to understand is, what I never understand is, obviously we all, how could there be any bipartisan anything about the fact that the world's, in crisis? But then also there's so much money to be made. There's so much money to be made. What's the incentive to deny this other than, clinging to fossil fuels and whatever? But yeah, the people who don't believe, I always think about the flat earthers. I'm like, this is super simple. Just somebody go to the edge. Just go to the edge. Take a picture. Take a picture. What's there to talk about? Get in a boat, guys. Just get in a boat.
I'm going to borrow that if I can.
Yeah, you should. You should. I'm always like, this is this is solvable.
Or just go over
I think I got through most of my questions, but yeah, we can talk about the filmmaking thing.
Tell us.
Well,
I want you guys to give us advice. What should we be doing to tell this story in a compelling?
So I would love to talk about that, and I would love to talk about us filmmakers and what we can do. So first and foremost, I think that there are so many positive messages. There is such an important place for Eat Your Broccoli information docs and films things too. But I think that there really is an incredible way for all of us to both where you are and where we are, we all see the power of narrative. And it depends what lens you want to look at it through. So first of all, and I'll just say, jumping to the chase, as a filmmaker, I think that there is a huge responsibility to try to talk to the next generation and be entertaining. I always say, I wish some of the art films were more entertaining, tried harder to be entertaining, and I wish the big tent poles tried harder to have a message. Why not? Why would you not take these hundreds of millions of dollars and try to say something to the world?
Absolutely.
So, I will say for my own films, not to just talk about them, but when I took on Wonder Woman, I think what was such an important responsibility to me was to say, okay, when I was a kid and I saw Superman, it changed my life. And so I get to speak to that next young generation. What can I bring to it? And I found myself looking at the superhero genre and saying, okay, superheroes were designed post-World War II. And so it was about Hitler, the bad guy. And you go kill the bad guy and everything's okay. But we're still using that model, and don't we know better than that? If what we're using is a metaphor to inspire the generation of tomorrow how to be a hero, isn't that what it's for? How many kids are coming out of a movie that's got a bad guy and you kill the bad guy with a thing, inspired that they could change the world? Why would we not do that? So when we very consciously decided to try to make Wonder Woman, in part, the opening chapter about climate change, because she thinks there's a bad guy. So she comes to go kill a bad guy, and then she finds out that it's us, that we're the ones causing it. And she has to decide whether to stay and fight for us or not. That ends up being the movie. Now, when it comes to Wonder Woman 84, I was so happy we got celebrated for the feminist message and women and all of these things, and so honored to be a part of that. But Wonder Woman 84 is literally only about the climate crisis. I said, what can we do right now? I said, I honestly believe this, and this is something I want to leave with everybody. I think we are being played by lesser issues right now. We are being played by fighting with each other and talking about differences and all of the things between us and all of old grievances and things. And I'm like, you guys, look over there. Like, it is coming at our backs, and we are fighting about us versus you, me versus this. And so I had to make a choice, because I could feel that the world wanted me to do a big follow-up of a feminist thing. And I was saying, I'm so proud I got to do that. It's inherently going to be feminist because it's about a woman. But I decided to do the monkey's paw. It's about what if everybody got their wish. And in this journey, even Wonder Woman takes, because we all have a reason for wanting that other car, or still wanting to do this, or wanting to be somebody, or wanting to look cool, or we all have wonderful reasons. But it was about even Wonder Woman fell for accepting a wish. But what happens in this world if we all get our wish? Give back your wish. Is she ends up having to be the first person to give back her wish, because we cannot save this world if each of us just wants a little more and more and more, and 2 cars, 5 cars, blah, blah, blah. And so I only say that as an example of believing that there's a positive way to not be preaching, hopefully, and making entertainment that that educates people. So I would say, even my advice to all of us here is, like, how can we creatively embrace entertaining story as well, and be subtly talking about something that we need to do to save our world.
I mean, you didn't even, the words climate change were not even in that.
Nope.
Right.
No, but you watch the movie. Watch the movie, and you see all the things that were actually happened. That was like the insurrection, like in DC happened, and you see like the chaos and the smoke and the blah, 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 until people start to give up their wish. And so it literally, you're feeling climate change. Mm-hmm. You're feeling the metaphor of, if every single person gets what they want, look at the chaos, nightmare, fire, torching of the earth, because it's just too much, It's this opportunity of the way we're living, and particularly Western civilization, is too much.
I think that there's sort of an addendum to that now too, which is that fighting climate change, and maybe it's because I'm so embedded in the technology side of things, does not have to be eating your broccoli.
Exactly.
That we can do this without, in fact, if you flip over to the clean side, you'll save money. Come on, who wants to drive a gas-powered car in California when you're paying $5 a gallon for gas, when you can get your electricity, by plugging into your garage and go equivalent amount of money and save $70 every time without filling up. You don't have to be eating your broccoli. I don't like broccoli, so I can say that. Pardon me to all the broccoli lovers out there. It's the one thing I agreed with George Bush Sr. on. But it's true with a whole bunch of other stuff too. Like, for example, one of the things I love about what happened with the bipartisan infrastructure law is that there was a 10 times increase on the amount of money we're spending on weatherizing homes, especially for poor people. And if you weatherize your home and you can save all of this money just by installing, efficiency, that is a win-win-win, right? And plus, people get put to work installing those. Plus, the products are made somewhere. Back to this holistic notion. So I feel like we've got to be saying, look, this is a better thing. This is a much more fun existence to drive an electric vehicle, or to have a home that is a net zero home, or than your McMansion that is heating the neighborhood or cooling the neighborhood because it's so inefficient.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that I think that a la Wonder Woman 84, we all do need to. I get very frustrated with some of the influencer world that's telling everybody they all need a Kelly bag and to fly private jets and to look a certain way, when I'm saying, really? That's what we did with all these years of that's how good we became with all of these years of peace, is we just became absolutely about ourselves. However, I also
I second that.
yeah. But
Good. I like that.
but I also think that there's incredible things like The Biggest Little Farm and all of these messages that come out, which that movie I love so much. And you know what I think it is? I think we all need to go into this with a wartime philosophy, right? Wartime, right? It's wartime. When we have fought wars that we believe in, we don't get the young men to go fight World War II by saying, hey guys, do you want to go get in a trench and be muddy and cold? No, we say, I am fighting for something I believe in, and we are going to save this world, and they did. And they did, you know? I think that's what, it's the positive message here. Like, this isn't easy. But look at this beautiful community that you watch change. Look at these lives. Look at The Biggest Little Farm, that land transformed.
Well, that's why, I mean, help getting people to see the incredible magic of a clean energy economy. It's not magic, it's science, but nonetheless, get people to really embrace this future. I mean, when people start working at places where they really are transforming both communities as well as the energy system, it's utterly positive. It's utterly transformational. Here, I mean, for example, we now we're the first nation in the world, and this gets back to, some national pride and all of this, because by the way, these laws are not just the most historic in the US, but as Al Gore says, these are the biggest laws in the history of the world. And it's true, they are so consequential. All of our competitor nations are very envious of what we have been able to do. But we are the first in the world to have achieved what is known as fusion ignition. And, we have fission, which is nuclear energy, where you split an atom, and fusion, where you mash atoms together and you create unlimited clean energy. And there's no waste. It's not got the same problems that fission does. And we, at one of our labs 2 years ago, in December, a year and a half ago, were able to be the first in the nation to achieve this, which is really a look forward to what can happen, that we will be able to achieve commercial scale fusion. And the president has a decadal vision in 10 years to be able to do that. That gives me such pride and hope for our future, and telling those kind of stories, I think, is really part of the solution.
I couldn't agree more. And what has Hollywood made its world on? Stories of people being heroes. Being heroes.
Superheroes, yes.
No, not even just
you
superheroes.
have the fight, and then you got
being
the
a hero. Being a hero. We've told that story since the silent films. It's the hero. I think Hollywood has a way of being backwards facing and thinking that that the pattern of that old story should only mirror the World War II one. But actually, there's a million of these stories. Like, how many inspirational stories have we seen about baseball and all kinds of things? Like, if we all really think about this way and think about, like, wow, what's this tiny, and not even literally about it, but what's the tiny story that's changing the world? Like, so many Pixar movies have addressed these sort of thematics in the past. I think it's something I encourage everyone to do, and everyone to always ask themselves, and ask ourselves in the government too, like, what is the positive, truthful narrative that keeps the fires burning? Everybody wants to save the world. We all want to do it.
Well, come to DOE and we'll show you around our labs and get you totally inspired. Number one. Number two, can I ask like a practical question? As a filmmaker, I was having this conversation with Rashida. What are you seeing in the film world about even like filming in places that are undergoing climate change? Is that something you guys are seeing and experiencing?
We're just starting to, because I think it's like we've been shut, but like it's changing so rapidly, and the industry's been shut down for the last few years. But I'll tell you, I come from a family of fighter pilots, and my uncle
Love it.
was
Isn't that perfect?
my uncle was saying to me, who's designed planes as well as being a pilot, was saying there's a very good chance we won't be able to fly anymore within your lifetime because of what's going to happen with turbulence and heat, right? That's no joke. Like, that's real. And so even getting from place to place, like, talk about can we shoot on location, we won't be able to get there. You'd have to go back to steamer ships. And definitely I've, been into, when I shot in Italy, Themyscira in Italy, torrential downpours, we lost one of our sets. Like, it's definitely going to become more and more difficult to rely on the weather in the place that you're going to shoot, much less get there.
That's true in every profession. All over the world. It is so true. So, Madam, child of fighter pilots, and I know your mom is out here who worked for the EPA.
My mom is an environmental scientist.
Environmental scientist. This
Right there.
great combination. So, I don't know about you. Let's enlist this crew and have them all report for duty.
Let's go change the world, guys.
Let's do it. Thank you.
That's awesome. That was great. So great. Oh, very fun. Very fun.
Attention guests, please remain seated while our speakers exit the stage. Please remain in your seats. Handing off the mic.
Everybody give it up for Secretary Granholm and Miss Patty Jenkins. Louder, louder. If you are not encouraged to join the fight, I'm gonna have to check your pulse, because are you alive? That was incredible. We're gonna ask you guys to stay in your seats, because we have a U.S. Secretary here and Secret Service is doing their job, all right? Just so you guys know, we have a 20-minute break after this, and then, go get your vegan eats, make the network. Let's talk about these stories that we're about to tell. It's gonna save our planet. And then come back and we have the science with a twist behind the making of the upcoming blockbuster Twisters. Y'all ready? All right. Enjoy your break, okay? We got 20 minutes. See y'all in a bit.